Tyson Fury sees Saudi Arabia as a more favorable location to Andy Ruiz than it is for Anthony Joshua. I'm going to quote the Gypsy King directly here. He says, "It's a bizarre location in Saudi Arabia, and the heat might affect both fighters. If anything, Andy Ruiz might be more used to the heat because he's Mexican and lives in California. It's always hot there, whereas Joshua lives in London and it's not always hot there. He's already been knocked out, so that favors Ruiz. I think fighting fire with someone who is quicker than you and puts better shots together is a disaster. I don't really see the fight going any differently unless AJ comes out and boxes on his toes, which we know he can't do." He then goes on to say, "The difference between me and Joshua, the difference is I make this look good. The difference is I travel all around the world, do what I've got to do, and I'm good at my job. That's it." All right. Those are the words of the Gypsy King. Now, first of all, with regards to the climate in Saudi Arabia, he's obviously not somebody who has ever visited the Middle East in December. As I've mentioned many times before, I lived in that region for a couple of years, so I'm very well acquainted with the climate, and it's actually not hot in December, particularly not in the middle of the desert. All right. It could be as low as maybe 9 or 10 degrees in the middle of the desert in Saudi in December. So the temperature is not going to be an issue for either man. In fact, it might be slightly on the chilly side on certain nights. Yeah. So we can throw that out the window. The other things that Tyson Fury mentioned, he said that fighting fire with a guy who puts his shots together better and is quicker is going to be a disaster. I agree. I don't think AJ can be fighting fire with Ruiz. But when he goes on to say that the only other way is if AJ boxes on his toes and he can't do that, I disagree. I think AJ can box on his toes. I think he was boxing on his toes up until he got caught in the third when he went in to finish Ruiz. And in fact, I think that's the best way for AJ to go about it. AJ certainly can't box on his toes anywhere near as good as Tyson Fury. We all know that, but I don't think he has to beat Andy Ruiz. You know, you don't have to be a Tyson Fury to be able to outbox a shorter guy in terms of the skills, just like Deontay Wilder doesn't have Tyson Fury's skills, but yet he was still able to outbox Berman Stavern, for example. So in a similar way, I think AJ could outbox Ruiz if he adopts not only the right tactics, but the right technical adjustments. Now, one area where I'm kind of in agreement with Fury, at least in terms of where I think there's potential problems for AJ, is in this idea that AJ might exchange and fight fire with fire, because he repeatedly tried to do that in the first fight, even after he got dropped, which was bizarre. Maybe it's because his judgment was off after he was concussed from the first big left hook. Or maybe he had something else going on in his head. I don't know. But I noticed in the first fight that Ruiz's feet were so slow that when Anthony Joshua was at long range with his left hand down, Ruiz wasn't able to be very effective in throwing anything over the top of that low left hand. In fact, I noticed that Ruiz was more hesitant when AJ had his left hand down. And I believe that this is because Ruiz had to split his attention between watching for AJ's left hand coming up and striking him in the face as a hard jab, as it did several times in the first 3 rounds prior to the knockdowns. His attention was split between that hard jab coming up from outside of his field of vision, down by AJ's knee, and AJ's right hand, which was up by his chin. So you got AJ's one hand all the way down by his knee and the other hand up by his temple, really. Ruiz doesn't know where to look. Okay, so Ruiz was hesitant at long range. Ruiz doesn't have fast feet. He's not a guy who can close the range real quick and then throw a right hand over the top against a much taller guy. That's not his game. Ruiz really relies on you standing your ground and exchanging, or allowing him to creep close enough to the point where when you throw your long range shot, you're not quite long range enough. That's what he relies on. But he's far more effective with hooks, okay, at mid-range than he is with, the straight shots. Once he gets you At close range, he can let some straight shots go, hooks go, all kind of different punches. Yeah. But I say all that to say this. Rob McCracken, in between rounds in the first fight, was constantly telling AJ to keep his hands up. And I noticed that when AJ did keep his hands up, Ruiz was more aggressive and Ruiz was able to get to AJ more. And I've explained why in several videos. Also, AJ has talked about mistakes that he thinks he made in the first Andy Ruiz fight. One of them seemingly being that he moved too much, that he was moving around the ring like a ballerina. He said that was never part of the plan. Well, I personally think it was the most effective thing that he did. There is a tendency, it would seem, in Team Joshua, including with Robert McCracken, to throw the baby out with the bathwater, to look at everything that AJ did in that first fight and try and change almost everything, when you don't need to. In fact, if you try and change everything, it's probably going to create problems which weren't previously there. That's what I suspect, you know? So keeping your hands up at all times, even at long range, I think that's actually a mistake for AJ against Andy Ruiz. I think at long range, you should have your left hand down. Keep the guy guessing. Stay loose. Keeping your hands up all the time actually takes up more energy out of you. You know? And standing in the center of the ring and not budging and trying to hold center ring all the time. Against a guy like Andy Ruiz, again, a big mistake. You want to make that ring as big as possible. You want to utilize the whole area of that ring. Because you want Ruiz to be chasing you with his slow feet, getting frustrated. The more frustrated he gets that you're being negative and he can't get to you, the more mistakes he's going to make, the more opportunities he's going to give you to capitalize on him. Not just trying to hold center ring and not move. Ruiz is not quick enough to be pinning you on the ropes all the time. I mean, he pinned AJ on the ropes several times in the first fight, mainly after AJ was hurt from that big left hook in the third, and AJ's legs were just never the same after that. But when he was fresh, Ruiz wasn't able to pin AJ anywhere. His feet ain't quick enough. So, you know, I do worry about Team AJ throwing the baby out with the bathwater in terms of what they did in the first fight. That concerns me. From Andy Ruiz's perspective, is great. You know, if you're on Team Ruiz, that's exactly what you want. Is you want AJ to dispense not only with things that he actually did do bad in the first fight. Well, you don't want him to dispense with those. But if he's going to dispense with the things he did bad in the first fight, you also want him to dispense with things he did good in the first fight, you know, to compensate for that, you know. So it's very, very good news for Andy Ruiz, but not so good news as far as I'm concerned for Anthony Joshua, throwing the baby out with a bathwater. He does not want to exchange with Andy Ruiz. He doesn't want to be in the middle of the ring with him. You know, wants to keep the fight at long range, yes, but use the whole of the ring. Don't try to just stay in the middle on some macho thing. No, man, use the whole of the ring. If they want to call it dancing, if they want to call it running, let them call it that. You can call it winning. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.